About forgiveness. If you're an energetic being and you have anger or bitterness or resentment about anybody, that's the thing about anybody. It's not like it's, well, most people I don't have any of that with, but with him, you don't expect me to forgive him, do you? Here's the deal. Whoever it is, it's in our consciousness, right? It's not, well, as he says, it's not, well, if you knew, if that happened to you, you wouldn't be able to forgive either. And as he says, well, in that case, maybe I wouldn't be able to forgive and I wouldn't get healing either. Right? That's the whole thing. If we're holding on, then it can block the flow. It blocks, energetically it blocks us, and it can block the flow of good in our life, because in metaphysics and spiritual understanding, everything's happening from the inside out. We're releasing the kingdom of God, which Jesus said is within you, into our life, into our world. And that's a very different perspective than a traditional idea that somehow God is going to do it for us from the outside. Oh God, please, whatever it is, please do this for me. And we're saying, no, that's not actually how we see it. We see it as a releasing of the kingdom into our life, allowing the kingdom to flow into our life. And if there's a block, you're not going to be releasing. You're blocking it. And energetically, if we're holding on to something, then there's a great possibility we're going to attract more of that into our life. Right? We were so angry. I'm reminded of the person who quit his job because he just couldn't get along with that certain employee or boss or whatever. And he goes and gets another job, and he quits that one. Like, why did you quit? Oh my gosh, there's 7 more people exactly like him at my new job. Why? Because wherever you go, there you are. Right? Charles Fillmore said that, in fact, he wrote a pamphlet called A Sure Remedy, which is, he says, every day, if you were to spend 15 minutes every day forgiving everybody and everything, that would heal all problems, all ailments. That's quite a promise, isn't it? Forgiving. In fact, the late Emmett Fox, the great metaphysician, he said, before you go to bed at night, forgive everyone and everything. Forgive everyone and everything. We're like, well, I've already done that. I've forgiven everyone and everything. There's no one in my life that I need to forgive. Hey, I was in the gym yesterday, and I had to forgive somebody in the gym. Yeah, I mean, every day there's somebody you could probably forgive if we're out doing anything at all, I suppose. Right? I was in the gym yesterday, and I do what's called a supersets, where you go from one machine to another and back again, so you do a set here, you go to here, you do a set. Well, in a gym, that can be a little difficult sometimes, and it wasn't very crowded, so I took a medicine ball and I put it on one of the machines that I was using, going back and forth, and I only gone a minute or two, and when I came back, there was someone on the machine. They had taken the medicine ball off and moved it. I'm cool with that. I was like, I came back and she looked up, she said, oh, were you using the machine? I said, yes, I was. And then I said, please finish what you're doing. And then she got off the machine, and then she started to lecture me about how I should have put a book bag there or some personal item. I said, oh, well, I put a medicine ball. Yeah, but you should put a book bag there, or, some personal item or whatever. And so I just, I said, okay, and went about my business. But my humanness, as I walked to the other machine or whatever, my humanness started going, a little bit of my humanness. Does that ever happen to anyone? A little bit of my humanness started to say, oh, so you think I should do things the way you expect them to be done, you know? Put a personal item there, you know? And, you know, didn't a medicine ball sort of communicate anything that someone might be using that piece of machine? You know, the humanness. So even little things, and I didn't stay there long because I recognized it, and I'm like, okay, Justin, let it go, let it go, you know, let it go. Every day there's probably somebody, maybe every day, or once a week, or whatever, you know, who is helping us see that we are still growing. Right? How many of you are still growing? We're still growing. And we're trying to bring it back to ourselves to accept responsibility. Because the truth of the matter is, and it's not easy, is that we are spiritual beings, and the great saints and sages tell us you are always one with spirit. And does spirit ever get angry? No. No. Is spirit ever impatient? Is spirit ever annoyed? No. Is spirit ever resentful? No. No. Well, Justin, what about the Old Testament, though? God is doing all kinds of things. He's killing women and children in the Old Testament. He's got a bad temper. God is terrible. That was man's understanding of God, right? That was their understanding of God. Doesn't mean that's what God's Spirit is. That was their understanding. And Jesus came along and said, look, God, you know, the prodigal son goes wild and spends everything and comes back, and the father welcomed him with open arms. I love you, son, puts a ring on his finger, throws a party for him. God embraced. That was symbolic for spirit, right? So that's our true nature. If we ever get annoyed, impatient, angry, guess what? We're out of touch with our true nature. So we want to say, it's his fault. It's her fault why we're feeling the way we're feeling. But it really isn't. It's our response to it. Make sense? Yes. It's our response to it. Yes. So that we got to start with that, because otherwise we're going to be victims our whole life if we think somebody's causing us to be angry or upset or whatever. And secondly, we don't want to carry that around, right? We don't want to carry that around because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't, and it could be blocking the flow of good into our life, and we could attract that stuff again. How many of you know somebody who is always upset with somebody, and they're probably the same kind of situation, right? They're all same kind of situation, different names, different faces. Why? Because they haven't let it go. They're still carrying it around. Still carrying it around. So, important to forgive. How? How do you forgive? That's a big one. And how many times should you forgive? Jesus' disciple asked him, you know, Master, how many times should I forgive? This famous story, right? How many times should I forgive? Anybody remember? 70 times 7. 490 times. And on the 491st time, you can beat the mess out of that person. You can retaliate like there's no time. No, of course not. 490 times is symbolic. It's you forgive as many times as you need to forgive. You forgive until you let it go. If you just keep on forgiving and forgiving and forgiving, why? Because you need to, for your own spiritual health and physical health. How many stories have you heard of someone who was dying and nobody knew why, the doctors couldn't figure out why, and then a pastor or a counselor or someone's talking to the person and they discover that there was someone they were resentful or bitter about, that they hadn't forgiven. And it was sapping the energy out of their body. Sometimes it's themselves. They feel guilty about how they treated a son or a spouse or whatever, and it's eating away at them. So it's equally important to forgive ourselves until we can be free of it. So how do you forgive? Well, there's many ways to forgive. There are many ways. One is you can look at how have you forgiven someone in the past? Because you look at, well, what's worked for me before? I think that's very important. What has worked for you before in the past? Right? Maybe you wrote a letter. Maybe you wrote them a letter and you said, "Dear John," or whoever, and you expressed your feelings and, "I forgive you." And then you tore the letter up, or whatever. There are many different techniques that you can employ. John Strickland has written one in his book using affirmative words, affirmations, right? An affirmation is something that's true, but you may not necessarily feel it, right? You speak words that are true, but you may not feel it humanly, because the ego can be pretty tricky, can it? "Oh, I'm not going to forgive him. He doesn't deserve forgiveness." There's humility in forgiving, isn't it? It's humility. You may not be, the thing you're getting out of it is freeing yourself. And as Maria Nemeth, the author of You and Money, The Energy of Money, she says that you're also giving a gift to the person when you forgive them. Because now you're not sending all this negative energy their direction, right? You're also acknowledging, well, they're a child of God too. They're a spiritual being too. Not only are you freeing yourself, in a way you're giving them a gift, because you're freeing them also. You're not spewing all these negative thoughts in their direction. And I think that's very important. So John basically says, all right, you got bitterness, resentment, anger, whatever it is inside. What do you do? Well, he points out your thoughts, your feelings, and your beliefs can shift those feelings that are there. And by having affirmative statements, you can consciously shift how you feel. And I've been using this myself. I like his process. And lately I've been using it myself. I applied it to that lady in the gym yesterday. And it felt good, it felt good. I don't want a residue of stuff in my body, and I just blessed her and sent her way. And so here are 4 parts, and I'm going to lead you in them. I'm going to explain each of the part briefly so that we understand it. So first, number 1, you send these thoughts to the individual. Is there anyone in your consciousness that right now you feel some resentment, some bitterness, some anger? Maybe it happened 20 years ago. Maybe it happened 30 years ago. Maybe it happened this morning. I don't know. Is there anyone? Maybe it's someone in the future. Think of that person. If it's not too big of a thing, maybe you have a whole list of people. Maybe somebody has a whole list of people in there. Choose someone you can do this with now and send these thoughts to them. Now, we're talking about your higher self, right? Your ego may not want to say these things. Your ego will be like, "Oh, no, I don't feel that way. I don't feel that way, Justin. I'm going to be authentic. I'm not going to sit here and say these words. I'm going to be myself. I want to be authentic." We're talking about being true and authentic to your higher self, your potential, right? So here you say, "I love you. I bless you. I appreciate you. I forgive you, and I release you to your highest good." I release you to your highest good. So again, your higher self feels that way. Who you really are as a spiritual being really does bless that person, really does love that person, really does appreciate that person. That's the one we're calling upon right now. We're not calling upon that resistant little ego that's, "I'm not saying that to that person. They don't deserve that." Yes, but you deserve that. You deserve that. So let's say it together. I'll say each part. I love you.
I love you.
I bless you.
I bless you.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
I forgive you, and I release you to your highest good. Now, if you got those words out, good for you. Give yourself a pat on the back. Good for you. You got the words out, good for you. So affirmative treatment, you continue to do that, a daily basis until you think about that person and it doesn't bother you at all. See, that's called releasing, because resentment is to resense. Resense. You're reliving the hurt and anger over and over and over. You want to do this until there's no more juice in there, there's no more residual feelings about that person. So, number two. Now, number two is you're acknowledging their higher self and how their higher self feels about you. I am loved. I am blessed. I am appreciated. I am forgiven by that person, by you, and I am released to my highest good. Now that felt good when I said that about the lady at the gym. I felt good. Now, join me, and this is acknowledging the higher power in that person. I am loved. I am loved. I am blessed. I am blessed. I am appreciated. I am appreciated. I am forgiven. I am forgiven. And I am released to my highest good. Doesn't that feel good? There's some kind of freeingness in there, depending on how much our ego is resisting it. And then number three, now you're acknowledging that if that person knew their true nature, they probably would have never said or done whatever was done. And they would always, whatever happens, it's always unintentional, because they're so in touch with their higher nature, their higher self. Even Jesus ticked off people, right? That wasn't his plan. He wasn't there to tick off people, but he ticked them off enough to where they crucified him, So you're acknowledging now for them. You love yourself. You bless yourself. You appreciate yourself. You forgive yourself, and you release yourself to your highest good. Are you ready to do that for them now? Blessing them together. You love yourself. You bless yourself. You appreciate yourself. You forgive yourself. And you release yourself to your highest good. Good. And now the last part of this forgiveness treatment is something you do for yourself. And this can be very difficult for people because people have conditioning. People have ways they have believed about themselves. They have limiting ways they've accepted opinions of others. Some people think you're wonderful and some people think you're terrible. You've gotten all kinds of feedback through your life from parents and teachers and siblings and friends. And so we have these different feedback things we've been getting from the world. And so this can be sometimes very challenging to love and bless yourself, because that's what we're going to do now. We're going to bless ourselves. We're going to love ourselves, acknowledging what Jesus said, love your neighbor what? As yourself. As yourself. So if you don't have love inside, how are you going to give love away? Right? If you only have a penny, how are you going to give somebody a nickel? You can't. So it's a very positive thing. And think about it. You're an expression of God. You're an expression of God. Jesus said two things. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Right? So loving yourself is loving God. And when you love yourself, you're loving God. And so keep that in mind. So number 4, here we go. Say after me, I love myself. I bless myself. I appreciate myself. I forgive myself. And I release myself to my highest good. We're going to do this again because it's so fun. Ready? I love myself. I bless myself. I appreciate myself. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. And I release myself to my highest good. Wonderful treatment. Great way to end the day or start the day, to forgive. Why? Because it unblocks you. It helps you tune in to your higher nature, to be more relaxed, to be more free, to allow your good to flow, to attract greater good into your life. That's the power of forgiveness. If you break the word forgiveness down, forgive. To give some value for the hurt, right? You're not just, I'm going to forget about it and walk away. You're giving some kind of value in return for the hurt. What did we do? We blessed the other person. We blessed the situation. We blessed ourselves. We gave some good. John, I want to close with this story. John tells a story when he was doing ministry in a prison, a jail. He was 23 years old. He was in ministerial school. And they were talking about giving good in return for hurt, not retaliating. And one of the most notorious guys in the prison there, he had killed a man. And he spoke up and he shared a story. He said, one day the guard and another prisoner were walking by, and the prisoner spit on me. And when they walked by, I thought to myself, wait till I get that guy in private. I'm going to teach him a lesson. And then something he learned from Sunday school or somewhere came to his mind about exchanging good instead of retaliating. So he said, I saved my orange from lunch. And the next time I saw that guy, I gave him my orange. And it de-escalated the tension between them. And another one of the prisoners who was here listening to this, he was shocked. He said, I had someone spit on me and I knocked that person unconscious. But now I can see that I would have been the bigger person by just walking away. So there's a real life lesson of, instead of retaliating, instead of holding bitterness, resentment, anger, hostility, we give some good. We forgive, we send a blessing, and we bless ourselves. Let's get still for a moment. And we thank you, Father, Mother God, for your presence and activity in our lives. And we're grateful for this tool of forgiveness, for these reminders that are very practical, that we can apply every single day so that we don't hold on to anything, so that we don't allow anything to block the good flowing through us and as us, so that we can be a light in the world and be a blessing. And we go forth today to let our light shine ever brighter. And so it is. Amen.